Our story begins with our main character Troy, a mixed martial arts fighter, promising to be strong by throwing a knee into his opponent's face, causing his mouth guard to fly out. The referee in the octagon immediately stops the fight, since our hero's opponent is already gnawing on the canvas, pushing the guy away from the prone man, declaring him the new champion. After which Troy stood up, throwing his arms wide, and shouted that his name was Troy Chi. He is a professional mixed martial arts or MMA fighter. After some time, we move to another scene, where we are greeted by the morning news on air. Troy was wandering around the busy city and came across a broadcast that was shown on screens located on the cafeteria building. The news talked about a new unique tournament, an international wrestling competition that brought together fighters from all over the world, and which ended yesterday. And the TV presenter talked about how our MMA fighter, 20-year-old Troy Chi, knocked out Joseph Nakano, a judo master, using a knee strike in the second round, proving once again that mixed martial arts is the strongest fighting style. And becoming the youngest wrestling champion, he was awarded the title of World's Strongest Man. The channel also broadcast that Troy was the pride of the country, and our main character watched this broadcast with pride, repeating to himself that he was now the strongest man in the world. When he suddenly noticed a young girl standing on the edge of the cafeteria roof, and for some reason unknown to him, she was about to jump off, which greatly frightened the hero. He excitedly asked her what she was doing and shouted that it was too dangerous for her to be at such a height, and even alone. All the people who were next to Troy, and also watching everything that was happening, took out their fucking cell phones and started filming the girl, noting that if she was going to jump, then she needed to be filmed. And our main character, unable to bear such impudence, prescribed an overhand to one of those filming, calling him an idiot, since in such a situation the first thing you need to do is call the police, and took the phone from the poor fellow. The idiot's girlfriend ran up to him and, observing his not very good condition, began to shout at Troy for hitting the guy and taking his phone. But after she recognized Troy as Chi and the stranger, she immediately fell silent, and while all this was happening, the fighter called 911. He did not have time to warn the rescue service about the incident, and name his location when the railing on the roof of the cafeteria broke off and the girl flew down. After which, with lightning speed, he ran towards the young beauty in order to catch her. And at the last second before the fall, Troy jumped, pushing off the ground hard. It seemed that he would succeed. The hero was able to catch her at the right moment, and while there was a little time, he managed to look at her sweet face, calling the girl beautiful. Troy wondered briefly while he was in the air why she would do such a stupid thing, and suggested that she must be suffering a lot. And after a couple of seconds, the heroes landed right on the roof of someone's yellow car, without damaging it too much. A certain man, located next to Troy's landing, asked people for help, while the owner of the car was holding his head and worried about his swallow. Our main character, being in the arms of a girl, was bleeding, but did not feel pain, and thought that it was all because of adrenaline, and only hoped that he would not die. But the soul very quickly left his body, and Troy asked God not to send him to heaven, because he did not even have time to properly feel the taste of victory in this big game called life. Next, we are moved to a scene where we are shown a hospital, in which a certain Mr. He tells the mother of the daughter whom Troy saved that he understands the mother perfectly well, and demands patience, because the girls need to recover. But the mother does not really understand his words and asks to be discharged daughter from the hospital. The beauties opened her eyes, looked around and realized that she was currently in the hospital. At the same time, having perfectly heard the argument between the mother and Mr. He, the doctor refused to discharge the woman, and said that he had made a decision. But in the girl's body we notice Troy, since he refers to himself in the masculine gender, and when he gets out of bed, he notices that he has lost a lot of weight, and that his skin has become pale. Having stood up to his full height, the hero's whole body began to ache, and he also felt shorter, and attributed all this to glitches, wondering what happened to the girl he saved. Troy reassured himself that if he was alive, then she was definitely alive, and said that children in the modern world take everything too seriously when approaching the mirror. And going up to the mirror, he saw in it the girl he had saved. Our hero tried to say hello, but immediately covered his mouth with his hand, because his voice seemed too strange and high-pitched to him. Troy realized that the impossible had happened, because now in the mirror he sees not himself, but that girl, which means that he has now moved into her body. The hero became very angry from not understanding what was happening, after which he touched the reflection. Then the hero became interested in what was underneath him, and looking, he saw a woman's breasts, after which he screamed so loudly that even the alien mind seemed to hear him. Hearing screams coming from the patient's room, the doctor immediately ran into it, asking if the girl had woken up. But I saw a picture that made my mouth open like window shutters. A cute girl was jumping on her own 2 feet and looking in her pants, indignant that her boyfriend had disappeared, and boobs appeared. Noticing the doctor, Troy said that he was the strongest man in the world, but now turned into a girl who fell off a building, continuing that he checked his friend several times, but was only convinced of his absence. Next we moved to Troy, who in Tori's body was given a ride to school by his father. Our protagonist realized that he now has no choice, because before he finds him, he will have to temporarily start a new life, and wondered why he was wearing a skirt. He walked up to the place and read the sign. He was taken to the high school sports school, and then said that it would be a nightmare. And horror is not the right word. Before even approaching the doors of the educational institution, Troy noticed how some students began to discuss him, or rather Tori, who tried to commit suicide. Walking through the courtyard of the sports school, the hero heard a lot. Absolutely everyone was discussing Tori. Someone thought that the railing was simply broken, and someone was sure that she tried to commit suicide. The discussions did not stop for a second. Some students were completely against Tori's return to school. Troy got a little lost and walked into a seemingly quiet place. He carefully looked around to see if there were any extra eyes and ears nearby, after which he wondered why he, who seemed to be at school, felt danger. Suddenly, in front of Troy's face, a guy with green hair flew out of the office, breaking the door. The hero did not understand what was happening and assumed that this was all some kind of scientific experiment. But the guy looked rumpled and Troy asked him if everything was okay with him, after which our main character noticed bandages on the poor guy's hands and thought that he was probably a fighter. But the guy knew the girl and therefore greeted Tori, surprised that she had left the hospital. Troy, of course, not knowing this green-haired man, asked him if they knew each other, to which he replied that the girl was now a celebrity, and she was embarrassed. At the same moment, a big guy came out of the office and told Troy that he killed the mixed martial arts champion with his ass, noting that the girl was more beautiful in real life than in the photos, and this big guy was the vice captain of the judo Oaks section. After such words, our hero's bottom tensed considerably, because no one, but him, fell and killed him with his butt. Here we find out that the green-haired guy's name is Sally, since the captain asked the guy if he wanted to take revenge on the killer of his idol, who was standing in front of him, and Troy reacted in surprise to the word idol, after which the big guy explained that Sally was just dragging along Troy Chi. After all, the guy analyzes the fights of an already dead champion every day and tries to imitate his movements. And the funniest thing for the bald thug is that Sally created an MMA club and now wants to become #1 in the school, emphasizing that this sucker has no respect for the rest of the wrestling sections. The rumpled poor guy said that yes, he created his own club and so what, explaining that the school is known for a bunch of different martial arts clubs. But Troy just beamed with happiness, and could not believe that he had such an ardent fan in this school. But the guy immediately woke up the hero, saying that he considers Troy Chi to be his main opponent, and turning his gaze to the big guy, he said that everyone clings to him only because the so-called god of judo Joseph Nakano blew Troy away, adding that sooner or later he will destroy judo club. Our main character was confused and thought that the guy was talking too much for someone who had just been beaten up, suggesting what would have happened if Sally had won. Hearing such words from the rumpled poor fellow, the captain immediately grabbed him by the neck with his powerful hands, simultaneously asking the guy to repeat something he had just said. Having lifted Sally into the air, he told the big man that he was giving him a chance and asked him to try to kill him. Troy suddenly intervened and asked him to stop, but the captain told the women to shut up and step aside. The bald idiot said that the so-called MMA simply steals techniques from other martial arts and mixes them with each other, calling this type of martial arts shit, like Troy Chi, who immediately died after landing on him. But before he could finish speaking, Troy kicks him in the face, causing the big guy to just fall to the floor without even having time to freak out. Throwing a powerful kick, our main character shouted to the bald captain who he dared to call a girl, while Sally stood in a stupor from what he saw. And after the big man licked the floor, Troy told him to never dare to say again that Troy Chi was killed by someone's ass. Watching everything that was happening, Sally stupidly opened his mouth and screamed, not understanding whether the same Tori he knew was standing in front of him. After this very recent incident, we find ourselves in the second class A. The teacher stands in front of the completed class and explains that when an opponent tries to hit your genitals, they can use some kind of counterattack technique. He also noticed that girls may not be completely worried about attacks in this very area. While the teacher was talking about defense against attack, Sully sat behind Troy and studied him carefully, because, due to recent events, he did not understand why such a fragile, thin girl was so strong. After all, with just one blow she sent a 136-kilogram bald big man flying. Moreover, she masterfully dodged enemy attacks. Sally only admired her reflexes and acrobatic tricks, which probably would have saved her even from a rocket. After Troy landed, having performed a real trick, he realized that he could not put the goon down with one blow, only because the girl's body did not have enough strength. And the captain at that time was furious, because not only was he beaten by a little girl, but it also hurt like hell, and he emphasized that the woman really knew how to fight. While the big man was recovering from his injuries, Troy ran towards him, full of rage, and as red as a tomato with anger. The brute shouted that he should not be underestimated and threw his right hand forward to stop the attack. But Troy is no stranger, and he successfully dodged the huge hand, leaving the bald idiot confused. And wriggling like a snake, our main character grabbed the big man's head with his legs, after which he twisted a little. And then, grabbing the thug by the arm, he dropped him and performed a flying cross grab, making Sally even more surprised. The brute even blushed, either from pain or from shame. But he understood one thing for sure: this miniature girl was holding him in a vice. And shouting that it was a joke, he tensed up, using all his strength, and began to rise to his feet. This is bad, and Troy immediately realized that he lacked weight and strength, because this technique did not work on him, which means something was definitely wrong. The bald thug laughed, and called Troy his sweetie, planning to do something. And he wanted to smear our main character on the wall, throwing him into it. But noticing the problems, Sally ordered the big man to stop immediately, fearing for Tori's life. And at the right moment, our mixed martial arts master phenomenally jumped onto the back of the bald thug, disrupting his insignificant attack. Troy squeezed the captain's torso with his legs, forming a cross, and began to apply a naked chokehold. And the big man realized that this was most likely the end, because it was almost impossible to get out of this grip. In turn, Troy leaned down to the bald brute's ear and told him that this was the end, turning on his berserk mode. Our main character, having such a bad physique, was still able to strangle the giant, so much so that his eyes rolled back and he stupidly began to pass out. The bald thug fell to the floor near Sally with a crash, causing the guy to be very surprised and crawl back a little. To which Troy, after the fall of the big man, only wished him the most beautiful dreams. I feel proud of the worthy honor. Sully nervously began to replay the entire incident in his head and only realized that a flying cross handle and then a rear naked choke, which stops blood flow to the brain and causes the opponent to lose consciousness within 3 seconds, are not the types of moves that a normal person can perform. Not to mention a fragile girl. After which we find ourselves back in the classroom, where the guy still looks at the girl suspiciously and continues to wonder who the hell she is. We get into Troy's head. He thinks that in his current body he had to use all his strength to defeat the bald thug, because life has changed not for the better compared to the past, when he was a man. After all, this body is so weak that you need to spend all your strength even on easy opponents, not to mention real mixed martial arts masters. This means, the hero thought, he has become the same frail and weak child as he was in his distant childhood. But still, Troy gathered all his strength into a fist and said that he would never let his mother down. After some time, we returned to the bald idiot, who gradually began to come to his senses. 3 guys stood around him, trying to figure out what had happened, when suddenly the big guy jumped up and shouted that he would never forget strangling the little bitch, leaving the guys in confusion. They began to literally disassemble, word by word, everything said by the awakened Vice Captain Ox. And as soon as one of the guys suggested that the bald guy lost by strangling the little girl, he immediately grabbed both of them by the collar. The innocent poor fellows tried to run away, but they didn't have time and the Vice Captain scattered them like baseballs. But the bald idiot did not accept defeat, but only convinced himself that it was impossible for the Vice Captain to lose to some snot, citing the fact that he simply did not expect such a thing. The Vice Captain shouted to the scattered students that they should not tell anyone anything, because if this happens, he will simply kill them. And the guys, lying in one heap of their own bodies, told the bald bastard not to worry, and also added that a certain bear was still in Japan and he wouldn't know about anything. Already feeling the taste of revenge on his lips and tongue, Vice Captain Ox promised himself that he would find this girl and she would answer for everything. Then we again find ourselves in Troy's class. From boring studies, he simply stretched and yawned properly. But our hero did not expect such a reaction from his classmates. They began to swear at him and look at him strangely, saying that he yawned in front of everyone, and even with his mouth open. Classmates began to discuss Tori and say that it was as if she had become a different person, that she had amnesia, and worst of all, that her elegance had also disappeared. One of the girls with pink hair sat down next to Troy and asked him if he remembered his sisters, to which the hero replied that he had lost his memory. The girl with glasses reminded her, saying that she thought so, after which she invited Tori to get acquainted again. She also added that Troy could ask her any question about the Ramble School and introduced herself as Julia, a member of the Kyokushinkai Karate Club. A classmate with short red hair and bandages on her arm introduced herself as Vinny from the boxing club, and added that if someone bothers her, all she has to do is tell her, and the offenders will know the taste of her fists. After meeting, Troy noticed that all the girls were in fight clubs, which was really cool, and was surprised that this school really taught martial arts. The girl with pink hair had not yet introduced herself, and said that there was nothing special about them being in fight clubs, since about a third of the students at Rumble High School were in them, and another third were on some kind of sports team. After listening to classmate Troy asked what club she belonged to, and the girl replied that she was from the Going Home Club because she hated violence, to which our main character asked the question why then the girl dressed like a Muay Thai fighter. After the question, she explained that she forgot to introduce herself. She is the face of the sister group and introduced herself as Alice. Troy said hello awkwardly, thought about it, and wondered if he'd end up like that if he spent too much time with her. Suddenly, with a completely imperturbable face, Sally approached the girls and his classmates looked at him suspiciously. He looked straight into Troy's eyes, immediately grabbed him by the hand and asked him to follow him, leaving his classmates in the dark about what was happening. Sally quickly ran to the exit of the class, and Troy, following him, asked the guy what he wanted from him. Classmates began to suspect the green-haired he's in an affair with sweet Tori, which they don't want. They had already run out of the building, and Troy continued to ask Sally where the hell he was taking him, and warned the poor guy that if he didn't let go, he would greatly regret it. Finally the guys arrived at their destination as the guy stopped and said that this was a good place, and Troy noticed that Sally had a pretty strong grip as he couldn't break free from her. Sally let go of his hand and apologized, explaining that he just wanted to quietly ask how Tori managed to defeat Ox, why she acts like a completely different person, and why all her moves are so similar. Before the boy had time to finish speaking, Troy punched him and asked what these questions were for, and while the guy was dying for fate, we see this in his left hand. Our main character said that he squeezed his hand tightly, and now it hurts. And after getting up after the blow, Sally said that this direct blow was exactly the same as Troy Cheese. And to check this, the poor guy tried to hit our main character, but he didn't even blink an eye and calmly dodged. Troy was in disbelief, because somehow he had already been revealed, and we hadn't even finished reading the second chapter. After the miss, Sally asked Tori if she was really Troy Chi and if he was right, to which the hero replied that this was complete nonsense, after which the guy began screaming and pointing his finger at Troy, asking how he managed to defeat Ox, while so perfectly repeating all the champion's techniques. Tori explained that Troy saved her life, so she conducted an investigation and learned everything herself, but Sally, carrying out useless attacks, said that he did not believe in this nonsense, calling the girl a ghost. And our hero thought for a bit, cursing damn Ox, after which he decided that he needed to stay in the shadows for now and not be so frivolous. Sally warned that even if Tori didn't tell him the truth, he wouldn't let her get away with answering, and with words full of sarcasm, Troy said that the guy was so cocky. And he also smiled and gave the poor fellow the opportunity to do this. All Troy had in his head was that fighting was much more fun than sitting in class. And having carried out 1001 attack, Sally never hit, but was quite quickly, Troy emphasized. While dodging the attacks, the hero noticed that Tori's body was not endowed with strength or skill, but his perception and reaction were very good. He can clearly see Sally's punches, which means Tori may have martial arts potential, and he decided to check the level of Tori's defense, not by dodging, but by trying to block one of the green-haired's blows. Blocking the blow with his hand, Troy's eyes opened wide, as if his little finger had kissed the stool, and screamed at the top of his lungs, because it was very painful. After finally landing a successful hit, Sully stood up in a stupor and asked Troy if everything was okay, to which he replied that he was in unusual pain. The hero turned all red, and tears even came out of his eyes, and he asked the guy rhetorically whether he knew how strong the blow he made. And we see the picture from the guy's eyes, or rather the little innocent girl whom he mercilessly hit. He felt very sorry for the girl, and he reached out to her to apologize. But suddenly the foot of some student flies into his face, who apparently noticed how he hit a defenseless and innocent girl in his eyes. The student yelled at the guy for daring to hit the girl and warned that he would never forgive such a thing. This is Santa Barbara, thought Troy, not understanding where this bastard came from, the damned savior. The guy, unknown to us so far, was indignant at how, being a fighter, no, a man, he could attack a girl. The student could not understand this and decided for himself, precisely, that he would never forgive such an act, because it was no good. And while Sally was lying on the ground like a sack of shit, an unknown person ordered him to get up immediately, simultaneously calling him a scumbag. The student turned to Troy, but he replied that everything was fine, because he just didn't expect it to be so painful, and asked who the guy was, and while he answered, he wiped the tears from his eyes like a real girl. For him, a very sweet girl stood in front of him, which even made the guy's heart beat. He was surprised that Tori didn't remember him, after which he told Tori that she probably really lost her memory after the accident, and Troy confirmed the guy's assumption. The student covered part of her face with one hand, said that he was sorry, and another word in Korean, after which Troy then recognized her whether the guy was Korean. And the student introduced himself. His name is Vut Jin Zijuan, and he is the head of the Taekwondo section, and asked Tori to tell about himself. Troy was a little confused, but said that his name was Tori. The guy smiled and noticed that the girl's name read like a peach, and he loves them. And he added that he came late and did not have time to protect her from the advances of that bastard. After which, romance sparkled in his eyes. He took Tori, or rather Troy, by the waist, which made him blush and not understand what was happening. Vut hugged the hero, bent him down, and inspired by love, asked him to accept his apology. And he reached out to the lips of the champion of mixed martial arts in order to drown in a kiss together. But the guy didn't have time. A weak but meaningful blow from Tori and an elbow from Sally flew into his face, telling him to stop. Getting a sweet elbow from the green-haired guy, Wout asked him if he founded MMA at school, and received a positive answer. He kicked over himself, right on the poor guy's head, while asking Tori to hide somewhere, since it was not safe here. Sully felt the kick well and moved back, and Troy at this time noticed that Wout had very fast strikes, if we talk about his legs. The student told the green-haired one that he was still too weak for him, and did not understand at all how a fighter of this level could study at the Azura School of Higher Martial Arts. And he asked if he really studied fighting skills just to offend weak girls. And Sully, wiping the blood from his nose, did not answer the question, but only got angry when Woot called him a weakling. The green-haired boy makes a direct blow, shouting that the student will now feel all his combat power simmered, but he only moved away in time, calling Sally too slow. The poor guy asked a rhetorical question whether Woot despises his speed, and immediately answered it himself, saying that he would speed up right now, and hit with all his strength, but the student still dodged the attack. Troy, watching everything that was happening, understood only one thing. Sally seems to be a stupid idiot, since she opens her hands to everyone she meets. The green-haired man's numerous blows, but noticed that the bell had sounded, which was a shame. Sully, determined, told the student that he just wanted to escape, but he quickly explained to him where his place was, hitting him on the head again so that his eyes almost fell out. And when the green-haired man kissed the asphalt, Vut told him that he had to go, and they would have fun another time. Troy is once again convinced of Sally's narrow-mindedness, because he hasn't even beaten anyone, and is only disgracing mixed martial arts. Vut returned to Tori, still full of romance, and told her that it was time to go to class, because the bell had rung. He told the girl that if Sally dared to pester her again, then let her run to the Taekwondo section, said goodbye and left, confident that he had probably won Tori's heart. Troy looked at the departing fool and did not understand what kind of crazy thing had happened. After our hero returned to class, he asked a classmate if there were 9 clubs at school, and she answered that exactly, in order: Sambo, Judo, Boxing, Judo Zaiatsu, Mixed Martial Arts, Thai Boxing, Taekwondo, Kendo and Ancient Martial Arts. In fact, there are other fighting clubs, but due to the significant inequality of power only 9 of the strongest clubs were included in the list. She also added that the guy Tori ran into is the head of the Taekwondo club, Jin Zijuan, and Troy immediately noticed that his legs were really strong, but his classmate emphasized that what was good not only at Taekwondo. After all, most importantly, the fact that he is incredibly handsome and immensely rich. He is like the main character of a drama who has descended into their world. After the story about an extraterrestrial god, Julia was mentally in the clouds, imagining how she was kissing a guy. Troy asked Alice and Vinny what was good about these cute guys, but they just asked not to pay attention to it, since Alice had a love fever again. Alice explained that a man who wears foundation, eyeliner and lip gloss is not at all masculine, and emphasized that she hates this type, and even gets sick of it. Troy looked at the girl suspiciously and thought that she was judging others. Not good. Suddenly our hero hears a familiar voice, which screams that Taekwondo is just garbage, an art for show that has no benefit. Troy turned around and saw poor Sally, whose whole head was wrapped in bandages. He was a copy of a mummy. The bandaged one said that the day would come. But before he could finish speaking, Troy turned to his classmates and asked them not to pay attention, but to continue the conversation. The hero told Julia that he remembered how she mentioned the order of the queue and asked if there was some kind of rating, to which the girl replied, "Of course, only it is determined by the results of competitions between students." And Troy became interested when he heard the word competition. Afterwards, a classmate explained that since no one believed in the school tournament system, one day an underground tradition was born, according to which the head of each club goes out to a duel and, having defeated everyone, not only becomes the strongest in the Azura sports school, but also gets the very only place. Troy showed interest and asked to tell us more about the only place, after which Julia said that it seemed like Tori really didn't know anything, and her mouth was already dry. Alice added that readers might get bored from the endless chatter, but Troy got mad and said to tell him urgently, because he had lost his memory, and no one doesn't even try to get into his position. And Julia continued that the student who takes first place in the sports school receives the right to represent the school at the annual national competition of young kings of fighting, and the best young wrestlers from all schools in the country participate in this tournament in order to emerge victorious and become the one and only. However, since, the girl added, the fighting division of their school is so strong that every year a person from the Azura school becomes the champion, a few words are circulating in the fighting world. Azura is the first, number 1 in the kingdom. Troy really liked what he heard, as he could become another champion. Alice noticed that it was strange how interested Tori was in their school's combat division, and she pointed her finger at the girl, since she used to hate violence, and the hero justified himself, saying that it was simply because he forgot about everything. But Alice said that she had lost her memory, and even though there had been changes in her character, it was alarming, because before the girl was quiet and a good student, and most importantly, she was not interested in the affairs of the school's combat unit, but on the contrary, she harbored hostility towards him, and emphasized that the girl had turned into a completely different person, which could not be, and she added that it was more like an exchange of souls, but Troy dissuaded himself, citing the fact that they were not in comics, and this was impossible, even though in his head the hero knew that his classmate had guessed right. Sally butted into the conversation and said that this year the championship would be his, solemnly raising his fist, but no one, of course, took the bandaged idiot seriously. Troy saw the meaning of his being at school, because, it turns out, by becoming the first wrestler at the Azura Sports School, he will be able to take part in world-class competitions, and this way he can become the strongest person on Earth, and asked if Mommy thought so. A classmate watched an interesting picture of Sally and Troy laughing together, thinking about something seemingly identical. They were probably possessed by an evil spirit, Vinny said, and her friends supported her. As soon as the lessons were over, all the students went out into the street and rejoiced at this seemingly ordinary phenomenon. Troy fell on his desk like a vegetable, rejoicing that it was finally all over, because he had to study here until graduation, and all red and tired, he said that he would definitely die here. When he suddenly remembered that he had not gone to the toilet even once today, and it was time to do so, because he would soon not be able to stand it. He was even disgusted by just imagining that he would go to the women's restroom, and wanted to go there when he returned home. Sally the mummy approached Troy and reminded him that they had not finished the conversation in the morning, because he had not yet told what was wrong with Troy Chi. But the hero was worried about more serious problems, and Troy shouted out that he was the mother of the champion. But Sally didn't have time to answer anything when the guys heard a painfully familiar voice that had been ringing in their ears not so long ago. This voice came from a bald gorilla who was walking along the corridor and ordering Yen Yen to come to the club, if he had the courage, of course. Sally turned away from Troy and said that apparently the girl was tired, so he said that they would talk tomorrow. But the hero immediately provoked the mummy to call himself a coward, but he only thought that he had received a lot of injuries today, and it was better not to get into a fight. Walking along the corridor behind him, a stupid thug appeared and after him asked if he had seen Xia Yen Yen, calling the hero an onion. Well, of course, it's not easy to recognize this fool all in bandages. Sally replied that he had not seen and left. When the idols entered the office, they found that it was already empty, and one of the guys suggested that it was all because the author was too lazy to draw a lot of people, but the vice captain only added that the boy quickly faded away. But he said that it was possible to escape, but that he could not escape, because tomorrow he would again have fun with Tori and Sally, and in one day he would finish them off. At the same time, Troy was holding on to the railing on the outside of the office, realizing that he desperately wanted to go to the toilet, and simply couldn't stand it anymore. Her father by that time was already waiting for the girl at the school, looking at his watch and not understanding why she had not left yet. When suddenly Troy jumped into the car and told him to drive faster, greatly scaring the poor guy. He invited his daughter to celebrate her recovery and have a snack somewhere outside the house, but Troy just wanted to go to the toilet, and said that they would definitely eat, but first he urgently needed to go home. The man tried to ask what happened, but the hero asked to talk less and drive faster. As soon as they arrived home, the hero ran to the toilet, realizing that something was about to burst. The father stopped worrying after he saw Tori run to the toilet, and wondered if it was really impossible to do these things at school. After the liquid began to flow from Troy, he could not contain his pleasure, because the feelings were so new and uncontrollable. He feels the liquid flowing out from a place unfamiliar to him, and these sensations are incredibly strange. As soon as he left the toilet, he exhaled, and at the same time realized that the ability to hold urine was much weaker than it was when he was a man, and also learned why girls take napkins just to pee. The father was already sitting in the living room and waiting for Tori to finish with her business, and as soon as she left, the father asked if the girl was ready to go, to which she answered positively. But Troy suddenly noticed that it seemed that the dishes in the kitchen had not been washed for a very long time, and upon returning home, his father, under various pretexts, took the hero out to eat outside the house. And also, having examined all the garbage in the apartment, he remembered that he had never seen his father clean up, and assumed that before it was not Tori who did all the work. And he added that for some reason there were no women left in the house. Of course, he didn't count. After some time, Troy and Tori's father arrived at the hospital where the girl was being treated, and the man thanked the director from the bottom of his heart, to which he replied that no thanks were needed. And he also added that upon returning home, Tori should be allowed to get acquainted with old things and places as soon as possible, as this will help restore her memory. Suddenly the doctor asked the father to look at his daughter, who looked much fresher in such an outfit, and also asked if Tori had a boyfriend. But the father replied that she was still small, and not so beautiful. When the doctor heard this, he laughed. While Troy was reading about his fall in a magazine, the two men continued to discuss it, and the director of the hospital said that he had a nephew. But his father immediately stopped him by reminding him of Tori's age. The hero read from the magazine that a funeral meeting had already taken place, which means he had already been cremated, after which he fell into the car, throwing his head back. His father noticed this and asked if everything was okay. Troy even cried, not believing that this was possible, calling his mother. A minute later, our main character asked his father to take him to one place, and he became interested in where. And they came to Troy's grave, on the tombstone of which it is written that he went through fire and water to see righteousness, and sacrificed himself for another person. The hero burst into tears, one might say sobbed, when he saw that everything that was happening to him was not a dream, but the pure truth. The father only tried to calm Tori, but he whined even more when he realized that they had also chosen a terrible photo. After which Troy clearly understood for himself that all he could do was live in the body of Thor. At first he thought that, having previously been an orphan, he would be lucky enough to receive parental love from 7 Thors. But the hero could not even think that Tori, like him, was not lucky enough to lose the most precious thing, his mother. Moreover, before Troy had time to finish his thought, someone came into the house and said that he had returned. His father was immediately surprised, and the hero was only in a stupor. Tori's father approached the hero and said that his brother had returned, which Troy simply did not expect. Our hero carefully went out into the hallway. His father told him not to be shy and come up, and his brother, in turn, right from the doorway said that some kind of trouble had happened at his home and he was obliged to come to visit them. And the father finally introduces his family, introducing his brother with the name Akun. Troy clearly understood that everything in this family is much more complicated than he could have expected. He also emphasized that this brother seemed rather arrogant, and wondered if there was more to take from Tori. After this moment, we find ourselves in a cafe where Tori's father, Troy, and the girl's brother are having lunch. Our main character noticed that the place was quite good, and decided that he would definitely come to eat here again. And while he was enjoying the food, his father and brother were looking at him intently. Troy almost choked when he noticed this, but they awkwardly told the girl to continue eating. Troy was a little embarrassed, and wondered why they were looking at him so strangely, because he was just eating. The brother looked at his father, and with just one glance asked what was going on, and the man showed incomprehension. The main character ate, relaxed, and put his hands on his stomach, after which he said that he couldn't believe it, because he had already eaten and noticed that the girls' stomachs were much smaller, and the father added that if the girl wants to eat more, then let her order. The brother immediately asked Troy why he said so strangely about some girls' bellies, but the hero was confused and told the family that he needed to go to the restroom and left the table. As soon as the girl left, Akun asked his father what was happening, and whether Tori had eaten at all after the hospital, because with the naked eye it was clear that the girl's appetite was completely unhealthy. But the father said that Tori had been eating since she was discharged, noting that she has a wonderful appetite, but today she just can't control it at all. And the brother, in turn, having listened to what his father said, recalled that Tori had not eaten so much before, but the man was glad that his daughter began to eat more. Otherwise she was very skinny, yes, and she also lost her memory, that's all I forgot. But Akun was not so optimistic. He explained that all this was somehow strange and did not look like memory loss, rather like a split personality, emphasizing that it would probably be better for them to take Tori to the States, since he knows a psychologist who can help her. After listening to Akun, the father replied that there was no need to worry about Tori. After which the brother asked why, and the man replied that at the moment the girl was completely healthy, moreover, she became happier, and suggested that his brother not change anything, and Akun suggested that the father did not tell Tori about something important, to which he agreed, and his brother, in turn, was indignant because the girl should know the truth. But the father tried to calm Kane down, saying that now Tori sees him as a father, not a stepfather, and the man has been striving for this for so long that he doesn't want to lose what he has now. And he added that the guy would think that he was doing a service to the old man, and he would be stunned. After which Akun thought, because if Tori doesn't know the truth, she will think that he is her brother, which means they will become a real family. The father asked the nervous Kane if he considered this act selfish. The guy replied that yes, but also added that he understood him, and even if he remained silent, the truth could still emerge, and clarified what the man would tell his daughter then. But the father, looking at the glass of wine he was holding in his hand, told him not to worry, because the girl wouldn't know anything. While his not-real family was waiting for Troy from the restroom, he washed his hands and thought about something while looking at himself in the mirror. The hero could not believe that Tori had such a young and successful brother, and is surprised that he rose to the position of director at such a young age. But after the incident, he did not show any emotions and did not even ask about his well-being, which is very strange. After washing his hands, Troy went to the dryer, saying that he was glad that he didn't have such a brother in childhood, because otherwise, they would constantly fight, And while he was thinking about all this, two guys looked at him in fear, which indicated that he is far from being in the women's restroom. But the hero did not notice anything and continued to think about Tori's brother, or rather about the fact that he now has a brother. Troy tried to push the thoughts out of his head, citing the fact that there was nothing to worry about, and leaving the toilet he bumped into his brother who had come in. And after he grabbed his head, because it hurt, noting that Tori's body has a fairly low pain threshold. And noticing Akuen, he got scared, after which he asked Troy what he forgot here, thinking about how Tori called him big brother, and even so vulgarly. The hero nervously pointed his finger at the toilet, and said that he had said at the table that he would go to it. When I suddenly noticed that this was a men's toilet, and that I certainly shouldn't have come to it like that. And looking at his brother's face, he tried to come up with a reasonable, logical explanation for what was happening. After which, pretending to be kind to a girl who was very scared, he said that he didn't even know how he ended up here. And Akuen turned away from the hero, saying that all this was disgusting and demanded that the girl get out of here right away. Having already arrived home, Troy lay on the bed with a mirror in his hands and enjoyed the reflection, noticing that he could look at such a cutie for an eternity. But he remembered how Akuen answered him harshly, and got furious, because if Troy had such a cute little sister, he definitely wouldn't talk to her like that, and he would spoil her with gifts. And I wondered how to understand what my brother said then, since the conversation did not end with my brother's impudent words. And he expressed words of apology, because everything happened because of him, and emphasized that he was very sorry. Troy couldn't get those words out of his head, because when he thought about them, it became clear that Akuen was trying to apologize. But what exactly his brother was trying to apologize for, the hero didn't understand in the toilet, and still doesn't understand now, emphasizing that Kane's voice felt real regret and guilt, and usually he doesn't say such things. After which Troy suggested whether it might be that what happened to Tori had something to do with his brother. In addition, frowning, the hero thought that something was wrong with this family, and that was definitely true. And the room is too neat, not a single trace that Tori even lived in this apartment. Troy immediately wondered if it was so clean before, and if they were cleaned, then why only here? When suddenly the hero's thoughts are broken by Akuen, who pounds on the door and demands that Tori open it. And as soon as Troy unlocked the door, a tall brother with an athletic build appeared in front of him. This could be seen with the naked eye. Since he was without a t-shirt, the brother asked the girl if she was getting ready for bed, and she replied that right now time for a night snack, to which Kane was surprised, because no one in their family eats at night. Suddenly, coming close to Troy, he took a lock of his hair and sniffed it, after which the hero stood in a stupor. But he immediately jumped back, shouting at his brother and calling him crazy, simultaneously asking what the hell he was doing. And Kane, slowly raising his head, said that his father was right, and it was not Tori who was standing in front of him. Troy got scared and nervously began to ask his brother why he thought so, and where he got it from. And he repeated his father's words that the girl had not washed since she was discharged, noticing that she smelled, saying that Tori was a germaphobe and washed every day, after which he asked Troy who the hell he was. But the hero reassured Kane and said that right now he's going to take a shower. He recalled that he devoted his entire life to mixed martial arts, which did not allow him to be with a girl. And now, he, a newcomer to this business, faces a real fight with the boss, for which he is not very prepared. While undressing, the hero's heart was beating wildly, and he was very nervous, because it's not every day that you do this in the body of a girl you don't even know. Troy continued to reassure himself, and said he would make it quick and just rinse off. He will also watch where he is looking, and will not look in the mirrors, but will simply close his eyes. And unfastening my bra, I realized that it was not so simple, remembering with what ease and speed the nurse in the hospital did it. And when it worked and that very click sounded, Troy emphasized that everything was just going smoothly. He followed his plan and closed his eyes, but could not feel anything, not understanding where the shower gel was. And I thought that nothing bad would happen if I looked with just one eye, and then with the goal of finding shower gel. But when he opened his eyes, what he saw caused even blood to spurt out of his nose, staining almost the entire mirror, and Troy shouted that now his mother could consider him a man. At this time, Akuen was reading Troy's notes, which he took during lessons, and wondered whether amnesia affected his handwriting, and whether the honor student would draw all sorts of scribbles on top of his notes. Suddenly Troy comes out of the bathroom and asks his brother to call the hospital, so that they have prescribed him a bag of type 1 blood. But when he saw Akun at the table with his notebook, he asked what he was doing, and he stupidly replied that he was doing nothing. The confused brother immediately went to the exit of the room and wished Troy a good rest. But he stopped and began to stare at the hero, which he did not like, and he asked Kane if he needed anything else, to which he, with a dissatisfied face, replied that nothing was needed and left the room, wishing the girl wonderful dreams. Closing the door, Troy plopped down on the bed, promising himself that from tomorrow he would wash himself every day, because he was sure that he would get used to it. He pressed his face into the pillow and noticed that walking without a bra was much more comfortable, as if he had gotten out of prison. My brother was still standing outside the room, forcing himself to pull himself together and pull himself together. But he doesn't succeed, and he's angry that everything turned out exactly the way it did. We again find ourselves at the school where our unsurpassed champion of mixed martial arts, Troy Chi, is now studying, being in the body of a young girl, Tori. Alice braided Troy's hair, and together with the rest of her classmates, she complimented the hero, since this hairstyle suited him well. Julia said that Tori was beautiful in her own right, but needed the help of a master like Alice to realize her full potential. But Troy was only thinking about how he never noticed how girls tied their hair up before gym class. Alice asked her classmates who wanted a haircut next, and everyone ran to her, after which the hero noticed that Alice was quite popular among the girls. And Julia added that this is so, because she is an amazing hairdresser. How can you not love her? Vinny said that the girls follow her in droves, and Troy, in turn, realized that this was useful information, and that he would definitely have to try it. After which Vinny added that dressing up was too dull and much more convenient with short hair, to which the hero replied that the girl was much more courageous than Alice. Immediately, Julia agreed with Troy's words and said that it wouldn't hurt for Vinny and Alice to switch bodies, to which the classmate did not react very well, and one might even say she was a little offended. Suddenly the girls jumped up and said that it was time to go. The hero asked where in bewilderment, and they answered that it was time to go change, humorously asking if Tori would run around in a skirt. Vinny had almost left the class, but Julia stayed with Troy and told him that she would show him the way to the locker room, because due to memory loss, she hardly remembers where it is. Approaching the women's locker room, there was a sign on the door that guys were strictly prohibited from entering and that violators would be castrated. Entering the women's locker room, the hero noticed that it was not so bad here, as it was very clean. What can't be said about the men's room, which stank wildly every time before and after training. Troy stood in the middle of the locker room and smelled hundreds of wonderful aromas, and even froze a little in place, enjoying the smells. But the girls pulled Troy out of this wonderful state by saying that it was not time to do bullshit, and he needed to quickly change his clothes. After which, the hero looked at Vinny and came to the conclusion that despite her boyish outfit and behavior, she was very cute, and she had good skin, and thought that if she grew her hair, she would become a very beautiful girl. And Yulia usually wears a jacket, so you can't see what a narrow waist she has, what a beautiful body she has, and with glasses she looks like a strict boss, but a bun suits her very well. The hero promised himself that if he ever returned to his body, he would definitely find a girl, and wondered who he would choose, Julia or Vinny, starting to compare the girls. Vinny is straightforward and the relationship with her will be very relaxed, and Julia will be behind him like a stone wall. Troy soon came to the conclusion that both girls are very good, and realized for himself that he had not even thought about what kind of girls he liked. But what's the point of thinking about this now? The hero stopped himself. While Troy was taking off his t-shirt, all the girls crowded around him and began to ask when Tori's breasts managed to grow, because recently she was a size 2, but now it looks like a size 4, making the hero wildly embarrassed. Her classmates suggested that the breasts were not real and were going to touch them, which is what Winnie wanted to do. The girl grabbed Troy's chest and said that it was firm and soft, adding that it felt like a real one. But while our hero was being touched by his juicy melons, his face turned red and he felt pleased. Troy was afraid of such sensations and turned away from his classmates, covering himself with his t-shirt. The girlfriends looked at each other and agreed that Tori was resisting. Under the giggling of everyone else in the locker room, they definitely planned something not very good for Troy. They began to surround the hero, which he was very frightened of, and changed his mind about the girls, saying that they were not cute at all, but the pure embodiment of evil. Already at the physical education lesson, running another circle, Vinny told Tori that next time she shouldn't moan so much, because the more she kicks, the more interesting it becomes, and Yulia added that the girl was just sensitive and that she couldn't even resist, adding that her bra is a little small. Troy was disappointed that he, the strongest man on earth, could be pinned down by a bunch of little girls, and he rushed forward, just madly begging to kill him, because he was very ashamed. The remaining girls said that since Tori returned, she became very energetic, and Vinny added that the girl used to be quiet, but now she likes this Tori more, and thinking that she was trying to compete with her, she sped up. Having seriously accelerated, like a bullet, she flew forward, saying that she accepted this challenge. A second later, Winnie had already overtaken Troy and said that he was running too slowly, urging him to go faster. The hero did not appreciate this, because first his classmate took advantage of his body, and now she also wants to trample his pride. But Troy was determined to cross, because this way he could test what Tori's body was capable of. As soon as the hero rushed, he realized that this body was fast, but it clearly lacked endurance, and realized that the girl had not trained at all, emphasizing that in a fight she would have fallen in the second round. Moreover, the sweet melons were in the way, shaking violently, which really infuriated Troy. The physical education teacher noticed how her classmates were running and did not understand where they were rushing, and this was obvious, since the finish was close. And victory, Troy came in first, passing Vinny just before her foot almost crossed the finish line. But without looking at his feet, our main character flew headfirst, emitting a girlish squeal. A few minutes later, we already see our fighter on a bed in the first aid station, where a nurse was treating his skin knee. After treating the wound, the savior said that Tori could return to class, but the girls only asked Troy why he ran so fast and where his competitive spirit came from. But the hero was worried about something else, namely, that the endurance of Tori's body is not so bad, and with the help of his skills, diligence and experience, it will not be difficult for him to return to the ring. But there is another big problem, a very low pain threshold, because when the hero did not fall so hard, the pain was simply unbearable, and he wondered why girls were so sensitive. And remembering that he was a fighter, he said that it was not permissible to be afraid of pain and wanted to come up with something to deal with this fight. Otherwise, he will never return to the ring and become a mixed martial artist. Finally leaving the first aid station, the girls headed to the hall. From where they could hear the guys training, they went to look for Alice. Inside, they noticed Alice and called her, but she was surprised since she did not come to life to see them there, and logically asked what they were doing here. After which Julia pointed to Tori and said that she had fallen. Alice, in turn, covered her mouth with her hand and was very scared. She approached Troy and hugged him, saying that he was very afraid of pain, and the hero noticed that the girl knew him quite well. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Sunny appears and flies towards Troy, releasing the basketball from his hand. But Adis manages to pull Troy aside in time, lifting him into his arms, while the guys fly into chairs, greatly frightening the others. Alice asked the hero if he was okay, and Troy replied that everything was fine, and Vinny added that Tori was not having any luck at all today. Our hero thought, because Alice had her back to Sunny, but still managed to react instantly, and while she was yelling at the guys, Troy looked at her and realized that the girl was much stronger than he might have thought. As soon as Sunny got up, he came up and apologized, since it was an accident, but Julia was sure that the guy did it on purpose. The former mummy approached Troy, and he just looked at Sunny. He understood that after such a fall there was not a trace left on him, and after yesterday's beating, not a scratch, as if nothing had happened. He called men's bodies the best and envied the guy. The green-haired man explained that nothing bad happened, since he played in high school on the basketball team, while our hero dreamed of a male body. Butting into the conversation, Alice said that there were rumors that the guys from the judo club would beat Sunny if he didn't crawl to them on his knees within 3 days, and asked what he would do about it. But Sunny got mad and said that he was not afraid of them, when suddenly Troy shouted that if he was so brave, he should just separate them. Then he added that he would go to the judokas with the guy, and thought that he couldn't remain so weak, but that he needed to constantly remind himself that he was an MMA champion. We move to Tori's father, who tells Kane that he will go get his daughter, and he asks him to wait for him. He offered to go together, and also wanted to drive the car himself. He also asked his father not to worry, promising not to tell Tori anything about their now common secret. The bell rang from the last lesson and Troy asked Sunny if they were going to the judokas. But instead of the green-haired poor guy answering, our hero heard from behind the voices of his classmates who said that they were going with them, and they explained that in case the judo club decides to win with numbers, they won't be able to do it, because if they are nearby, they won't dare to do anything. But Yulia was in a different mood and emphasized that no one would fight. Troy was happy about the news and praised Tori for making such good friends. The hero, full of determination and fire in his eyes, took his bag from the table and was about to leave the classroom, when suddenly Julia noticed that something had fallen out of Tori's position and asked her to wait a little. Troy asked with interest what was there, and it looked like a love letter, but who it could have come from remains to be seen. And Troy was very happy, and dreaming, he told his mother that her son had received a love letter for the first time. After receiving a love letter from a stranger, we find ourselves in the schoolyard, where someone is walking and imagining how happy Tori is when she receives his letter. This mysterious stranger turned out to be Vut, who not long ago saved Troy from Sunny, or so he thought. The guy looked at the sakura petals falling on his palm and called them as beautiful as Tori. The poor fellow imagined how he would hug his beloved tightly when she came to him after receiving the letter. While What is waiting for his love, we move to the judo club, where, of course, our favorite bald thug is the coach. He gave the command so that when the captain returned, they would please him with their achievements. But then the door to the training room opens, and everyone sharply turns their heads towards the exit. And in the aisle stands Sunny, who notifies Vice Captain Ox of his visit. The goon smiled and said that he appeared on the very first day, and the alibi didn't even know what to be surprised at, the boy's courage or stupidity. When suddenly the green-haired man shouted to the thug that he was the only stupid one here, after which his healthy forehead felt how his dignity was violated. And then the rest of the members of their recently assembled murderous gang followed Sunny, after which Troy reminded the captain about yesterday. Seeing Tori, he just looked at her carefully, and said that he did not expect to see her here, and they praised the girl for her courage. But the thug was not scared, he just smiled. Moreover, he was glad that he could kill two birds with one stone. Troy replied to Alibi that he was not going to be afraid of the one he made drool on the floor yesterday. Vice Captain Ox said that there was no point in talking anymore, emphasizing, looking at Sunny, that he did not come here to beg for mercy, and the guy gave an affirmative answer, after which the Alibi grinned, suggesting that the guy brought the girls here to deal with him and his students. But Alice jumped forward and said that she and the girls were only here to watch the show, and not to fight, which Troy was not happy to hear, and Vinny noted that she had come for a fight. Sunny spoke up. He informed the thug that he had come to finish him off once and for all, and challenged the Alibi to a fight, setting the conditions that if he wins, the bald one will leave him alone, but if he loses, the vice captain interrupted him and said that if he lost, he would dissolve his useless, worthless club. And the bald man added that the guy has no chance of defeating him one-on-one, since he has 5 people here, and therefore offered to put 5 of his students against his 5 girls. But if they don't fight, then Sunny will have to defeat 5 of his students on one's own. Hearing this, Troy grinned, because this idiot thinks that he is smarter than everyone else, and added that there is nothing easier than elimination matches, you just need to kill everyone in them. Taking off his bag and straightening his tie, the boy said that he didn't come here to give back, and suggested that we start as soon as possible. The bald freak answered with a sneer that it would be as Sunny wanted and called the first 3. One of the students volunteered to be the first, and went out to the center of the hall. The guy also wanted to come in, but the Alibi stopped him, saying that he was not allowed to wear shoes, and also reminded him that it was forbidden to hit the enemy in the groin and eyes, but otherwise it was fights without rules. Suddenly, Winnie came forward and told Slay to hold her horses, because now it was her turn. Alice excitedly called the girl, and Troy was only upset that she was ahead of him. All the students in the hall exhaled and were happy, thinking that the fight would be easy, and the first judoka had the same opinion. Sunny stopped Vinny and said that he did not want to involve her in his affairs, but the girl replied that she did not care about him. After all, the girl only came here because she wants to kick someone's ass. The fight began and Vinny immediately took a fighting stance. Troy, in turn, noticed that the girl knew what she was doing.